Still getting ready to live, still planning, still preparing, still waiting for the right moment, still saying, when I have more money, when I am more confident, when things calm down, when I finally feel ready. But what if I told you, ready is one of the most dangerous places to wait for, because you can spend your entire life rehearsing for a performance that has already started. Hello everyone, welcome back to Elevate You Lifestyle. I'm Eric Quick Nelson. Imagine this. You are standing backstage in a theater. You can hear an audience on the other side of the curtain. You have rehearsed for years. You know the lines. You have studied the character. You have practiced every movement. But right before you are supposed to walk onto that stage, you say, give me 5 more minutes. So you rehearse again. 5 minutes becomes an hour becomes a day becomes a year, and every time someone asks, are you coming out? You answer, almost. Then one day, the theater gets quiet. You pull back the curtain. The seats are empty. The lights are off. And that's when you realize you weren't waiting for your life to begin. Your life was waiting for you to show up. This is what we're going to talk about today. Let's dive into it. There's a difference between preparation and hiding inside preparation. Preparation is necessary, but preparation can become one of the safest places of fear to hide, because as long as you are preparing, you don't have to risk failing. And as long as you are planning, you don't have to risk being judged. As long as you are studying, you don't have to find out, rather you can actually do it. As long as you are almost ready, you never have to step onto the stage. And that is where people can lose years, not because they were lazy, but because they became addicted to preparation. One more course, one more book, one more certification, one more conversation, one more revision, one more year. And listen, there is absolutely nothing wrong with becoming prepared, but eventually preparation has to become participation. And eventually you have to enter the arena, because there are certain things life cannot teach you from the sidelines. You can read hundreds of books about swimming. Eventually you have to touch the water. You can study leadership, and eventually you have to lead. You can study relationships, and eventually you have to become vulnerable enough to love someone. And you can study about business. Eventually someone has to hear your offer. You can practice your craft privately for years, and eventually somebody has to see it. And that is where fear enters, because practice gives you control. Life doesn't. In practice, you can start over. In life, sometimes you can't. In practice, nobody has to see the mistake, but in life, sometimes they will see the mistake. And maybe that's exactly what you're afraid of. Not failure, but exposure. You are afraid people will finally see what happens when you try. What if you're not as good as you thought? What if they rejected you? What if you embarrass yourself? What if you gave everything and it still doesn't work? Those are real fears. But there's another question we don't ask enough. What if you never find out? What if the greatest tragedy isn't failing? What if it's reaching the end of your life, still wondering what would have happened if you had actually stepped onto that stage? That's a different kind of pain. Failure hurts, but failure gives you information. Rejection hurts, but rejection gives you direction. Mistakes hurt, but mistakes give you experience. Regret often gives you nothing. except a question you can no longer answer. What if? And if I don't want you carrying that question into an old age, I don't want you looking back at a dream you love and realize you protected yourself from embarrassment by sacrificing possibility, because that's the trait nobody talks about. Every time you choose safety, you are still paying something. You just don't feel the payment immediately. You pay in possibilities and experiences and growth in the person you never got the opportunity to become. Because action does not just produce results. Action produces identity. You become courageous by doing things while afraid. You become experienced by being inexperienced long enough. You become confident by surviving moments when you weren't. You become capable by attempting things that once exceeded your ability. That is why waiting until you become confident does not work. Confidence is often standing on the other side of the thing you are afraid to do. So you don't bring confidence with you. Sometimes you bring courage, and confidence meet you afterward. Now think about that. No, maybe you don't need to feel ready. Maybe you need to become willing, willing to look inexperienced, willing to ask, to hear no, to begin badly, to be seen learning, willing to walk onto the stage without knowing exactly how the performance will end. Because nobody begins as the finished product. The people you admire, you usually meet them after years of becoming. You saw chapter 12 and compared it to your chapter 1. You saw the polished speech. You didn't see the trembling first attempt. You saw the successful company. You didn't see the first customer. You saw the strong relationship. You didn't see the uncomfortable conversations that built it. You saw the mastery. You didn't see awkwardness. That is why comparison can make beginning feel humiliating. But beginning isn't humiliating. Beginning is courageous. There is dignity in being new at something. There is a dignity in trying and saying, I don't know yet, but I'm willing to learn. That's how life expands. And maybe there is something you've been rehearsing for right now. Maybe there's a conversation you have been practicing 20 times in your head. Have it. Maybe there's something you have been waiting to create. Make the first version. Maybe there's a application sitting unfinished. Submit it. Maybe there's a room you have convinced yourself you don't belong in. Walk into it. Maybe there's an opportunity you have been waiting to feel qualified for. Raise your hand. Maybe there's a dream you have been quietly preparing for years. At some point, you have to stop calling it preparation and ask rather it's become fear, because fear is intelligent. It rarely walks into your life and says, I'm fear. Sometimes it says, be practical. Wait a little longer. Research some more. You're not ready yet. Next year will be better. And because those words sound reasonable, we obey them. That's how dreams die quietly, not because from one dramatic decision, sometimes from endless postponement. Tomorrow, 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 until tomorrow becomes a decade. And listen, I'm not telling you to become reckless. Preparation matters. Strategy matters. Timing matters. Wisdom matters. But eventually, wisdom must recognize when waiting has stopped serving you. There comes a point when you already know enough to take the next step. Not every step. Not every step. The next step. That is all life usually asks for. You don't need to know how the entire story ends. You need enough courage to turn the page. And here's something else. Your first attempt may fail. Good. Now you know something you did not know yesterday. The second attempt may be embarrassing. Good. Now embarrassment doesn't control you as much. Your third attempt may still not work. Good. You are becoming dangerous now because the person who can fail, who can learn, who can adjust and return is very difficult to defeat. And that is what experience actually is. A collection of moments when reality corrected your theory. You cannot get that from rehearsal. You have to perform. And one day, something will happen. You will look back at the thing that once terrified you and realize it's normal now. You will wonder why you waited so long. Not because it became easier, because you became different. And you became different because you finally started. So stop demanding certainty from life. You were never promised certainty. You were giving opportunity, and opportunity has an expiration date. People change, markets change, bodies age, children grow, doors close, circumstances shift. The version of an opportunity available today may not exist 5 years from now. That is why there are moments when courage has to say, I'm going now. Not because everything is perfect, not because fear disappeared, not because you know you're a win, but because you are no longer willing to watch your own life from backstage. One day, the curtain closes from one end of us, everyone of us. And when mine closes, I don't want to be backstage, still practicing lines. I want evidence that I was here, that I tried, I risked, I failed, I learned, I loved, I created, that I participated in my own existence. So prepare, study, practice, become better. But when your moment comes, walk onto that stage. Your life is not rehearsal. This is the performance. Remember that. If this message spoke to you today, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe, and share this with someone who needs to hear this. This is Elevate You. Remember, you don't need permission to begin. You don't need certainty to move. And you don't need to feel ready to take the next step. Get out of rehearsal. Step into the stage. And as always, let's elevate.